Tiana, I am so pumped to have you on the Worth Listening podcast. Like, it has just been an amazing journey for you. I am so glad to know you, to have been able to run track with you, to have seen your story being told all over the world. I know it impacted me and it changed the way that I think about a lot of things. So I hope that other people will be as impacted by your story as I was. But let's just get started with the beginning, because not everybody knows who Tianna Madison is. So tell us a little bit about like where you're from, where you grew up, what your parents did, give us a rundown.
Okay, I'm Tiana. I'm from Ohio and professional track and field athlete. I'm from Elyria, Ohio. So out in the world, we claim Cleveland, but I am not from Cleveland. I'm from a little tiny town, 20 minutes west of Cleveland. And by tiny, I mean like we have one high school and like half the Black kids in that school were my cousins. That's the kind of place where I came from.
Small town.
Small town. My mom, in her younger days was athletic, but didn't do organized sports. She was a dancer. Like she was like on dance troupes that did, African dance and those sorts of things, a little bit of ballet, a little bit of modern dance. My dad, however, was in all the sports, doing all the things, and is a 5th-degree black belt, was a Golden Gloves boxer, just very aggressive, violent, could be violent, but was also zen. So you would never ever see that side of him. It was always perfectly channeled. So growing up as kids, he was like our big playground, our big teddy bear, but we also knew like he was Liam Neeson, like he had a particular set of skills.
Like, don't test him. Right.
Yes. Yes. And I think that served me well, because people wonder where that like edge comes from that I have, where I can go from like a sniper to like this really aggressive, and it just comes from my dad for the most part. I'm the middle child. I have an older sister and a younger sister. Both of them ran track. My little sister, Big Ten champ, did her thing. My older sister is in the medical industry. Bless her heart right now. Where she says she doesn't want to be essential anymore.
Right. Exactly. It was cute for a second, but it
was cute. She felt special for a minute, but she's done now. Yeah. So I think all in all, I grew up in a very service-oriented family, like do for others, very active family. Like I said, even though my mom wasn't in organized sports, like we went spelunking, cave exploring on the weekends. Like we were always into stuff. We never were forced to specialize into anything. And so how I ended up in track was just random. It was like what was offered. I didn't run summer track or age group track. I mean, we didn't have those clubs in my city at all. And I thought that I was going to join the wrestling team. I really just, in my head, I was like, Dad wrestles, I'm wrestling. Like, it made perfect sense to me. I saw track on TV during the Olympics, but I didn't see a track team in my city, not really. And so I didn't really know how to make that leap, or didn't really care. So I brought home the flyer for wrestling. I brought home, like, you remember the interest flyers? Like, we're having a interest meeting, like bring your parents or whatever. So I'm like super cocky bringing this home. I show my dad, he's hyped. He's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, you're going to be the baddest wrestler on the mat. I got you. I'm going to teach you everything I know. My mom was like, no.
We're not going to do.
Yes. And I wore my dad's wrestling singlet because we were the same size. Like, he was a little dude in school, around the house under protest for like a week. But that's why I ended up at track practice, because my mom vetoed wrestling.
I find it so
that's how I chose.
Yeah, I find it so interesting that you said track was not something that you knew about just being like in your normal environment. So often in small towns or inner cities, track and football are like the thing, and those are these sports. But to not have actually encountered that as part of your childhood, I find very interesting.
Yeah, super weird. I mean, I went to the ice skating rink every Friday. I was not on this path. Like, anybody from my youth that says we always knew she was going to be an Olympian in track and field is lying. Like, it was not on the radar at all for quite some time.
What did your parents do for a living?
So my mom is in the financial industry. So she's the vice president of a bank, or she recently retired. Yay. And then my dad worked at Nordson Corporation, which is a factory. And I mean, like, he was in one of those union factory jobs where they make more than like executives. So like, even though we don't really know what he did for work, he was like secretive for no reason about it. And we made up tales that he was like the super spy or something, and like Nordson was just his cover. That's really what he did. He like he was in manufacturing.
I like the way you spun it and made it into something really dope, though.
We did. As kids, we were just like, it doesn't make sense. You've got all these like lethal skills and you want to convince us that you just like put together parts all day, and we just never believed him. And he would feed into that mystery by being super mysterious about what he was doing. It was pretty fun. Yeah.
That's super cool. In light of those positions that they held, what kind of was the atmosphere around money in your household? Did they talk about like allowances and piggy banks, or, like, what do you remember about your childhood money memories?
Yeah. Well, that would come from my mom. Especially because she worked at a bank. So my mom was the mom that would come do like show and tell or junior achievements. I don't know if you remember those programs. She would do junior achievements. She would bring everybody piggy banks to start at home. And then I had a checkbook. At like 9 years old. And I remember it had it was a Fred Flintstones. I had Fred Flintstones checks. I was really excited because I got to pick them out of that catalog where you can choose your check design. And she taught me how to write checks, taught me how to use that ledger to balance my non-existent budget, because like, how many transactions am I going to make on my $2 allowance at the time? But we were practicing that. And then she had this old school adding machine where she did her like balancing the household budget, and we would sit with her, and sometimes we would add and subtract for her. We'd mess it up too often, so we'd get kicked off the job. But like,
got fired.
We knew how to save. We knew how to write checks. We knew how to budget very early on. That's not to say that we didn't mess all that up when we actually had money to play with. But yeah, it was always around because that's what my mom did, and what she's passionate about still to this day.
That's really dope to have somebody in the household that's just like a finance person, so can teach you finances kind of from a different perspective. And that you started young. Like you said, I think it's cool. We'll get to, like you said, more of the story down the road, but the idea that you have like this infrastructure in place in order to be able to kind of better organize yourself and your finances.
I want to say it was a blessing and a curse a little bit, because when I did get money, I was just like, you do it. And so I really allowed myself to take a big step back from my own wallet. And I think a lot of us make that mistake, especially in sport, because we're like, well, I need to focus on the training. I need to focus on the actual doing of the thing. And you want somebody else to handle the business, because it can get a little tedious, as you know. It can get a little like dry and overwhelming. And because I did that, I didn't actually know where my money was going. So like, step one into mishandling your funds is to not know what your funds are or what they're doing.
that is some very real stuff right there. Like, you don't know what is coming in. We can't get past step one, really. You're definitely not going to have an idea about what's going out when you don't know what's hitting the bank account. So, let's go back for a second, though, before we get to the adult years. What was your first job?
Oh, I'm trying. Which one was my first job? I worked at a
lot of first jobs.
I had two jobs. I worked at Kids R Us and I worked at Marco's grocery store. And I don't even know why I had a job, because I think I just wanted. So I'm gonna just be honest. I love money. Like, I like that.
This is a safe place. You can say things like that.
Yeah, I love that. For me in my life, more money equals security for me, and options. Like, that's what I love. Like, I have never owned a designer bag or anything like that, so that's not really where my brain goes when I have more money. When I have more money, I'm more calm. I actually spend less money when I have more money, because I'm like, right. So I think that's why I got a job in high school, is because like, yeah, my $5-10 allowance was cool and I could buy a la carte at the cafeteria, but I liked the ability to one, give money when my friends needed something and to just have it, right? So I worked at a grocery store part-time, 5 to 10. The agreement was that I wouldn't work during track season, obviously, but I would work at a grocery store. The grocery store didn't work out though, because I'm a perfectionist, and perfectionism and OCD while scanning groceries and packing them into bags does not make for a fast customer service experience.
I already knew where this was going. People were rolling their eyes. They were mad. They were
like, I love how you separated my groceries by type and box shape, but you need to get me out of this line.
Just speaks to the work ethic, you know, that we're laying the foundation for a really disciplined athlete. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. I mean, it all counts. Like, all the experiences, they go into the same pot. You stir it up and you get who you are, right? So yeah, all that goes. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, definitely here for it. So, okay. So now we're in high school. What were the conversations being had in the household about college? Was that like a must do? Was there savings? Were there conversation about the cost of college? Like, what did that look like for you?
There was one conversation, like a total of one conversation about college. And in that one conversation, we checked all the boxes you just talked about. College is a must do. Yes, we have the money for it. No, we are not paying for it. That was the conversation. So my dad was like, look, me and your mom talked about it. We want you to go away from school. That was a no-brainer for me. I'm trying to bust out of the small town anyway. He said, but we're not paying for it. Figure it out. And I was like, wow, okay. I did strike a deal with him that if I did figure out how to get to school for free, they would have to buy me a car because, you know, it's cheaper to buy me a used car than to pay 4 years of tuition, room and board, and the meal plan that I would have, you know, obviously chosen the best meal plan, the most expensive one, because I love to eat. So we shook on that. And then I proceeded to nail it in the classroom. And then honestly, that challenge was why I dropped my other sports, because I was also playing volleyball and basketball. But I knew that track and field was my best chance at getting even seen and getting better so that I could get an athletic scholarship. It's harder in a team sport. Like, I'd have to be so good at basketball and I wasn't. So it was just like, let me just stop wasting my time over here. I love the game, love to play, but there was no way it was going to be my ticket to college. So that's when I focused on track and field as well.
Okay. So how did you so did it work out? I guess maybe like you're a professional track and field athlete. Spoiler alert. Actually, I already told you guys in the intro, but like, so you pick track. Yeah, I'm assuming you got a track scholarship too, right?
I actually got a full academic scholarship. This is the fun part. Yeah. So I was offered a full athletic scholarship from Tennessee with Coach Carol Smith at the time. Now Carol Smith Gilbert. But when I did the, application and all the transcripts, I actually automatically qualified for a full academic scholarship. It's called the African American Achievers Award. So either way, I did not need to pay for school. And the athletic department was like, oh, we don't have to spend that money on her.
We got one other athlete we can spend this money.
We still can put her on the team. That's excellent. So I signed with Tennessee, but I was on an academic scholarship.
That is a really cool part of the story. Right? I think a lot of people wouldn't have known that.
Nope.
All right. So you get to college, you're away from home. This is where we mostly start adulting. I like to call it adulting with training wheels on because, you still have some structure around you. You don't have a lot of expenses when you're in college. What stands out to you about what you learned about money during your time in college?
I had none. And honestly, it might be one of the happier times because like if you didn't have money on that student ID card, you weren't eating. It was like really simple. Like
very simple.
You're not getting it. You got the per diem from the meet. Actually, Carol used to ask us if we wanted her to hold some of our money. Like it wasn't mandatory or anything, but when we would make it to like conference or, regionals or something, we got those big envelopes of cash to kind of, because our meal plan would not work or school let out and we're still there,
Yeah, good old days.
Ask if we wanted her to hold some of our money. And so we actually would give her some of our per diem at the beginning of the trip, and not spend it. So it was almost like we had little savings accounts with her. So like at the end of my freshman year and my sophomore year, I had a couple $100s that she would hand me back because I was like squirreling away little per diem money. Now, we weren't starving at meets trying to hold on to the money, because some athletes do that. They're like, let me just get Chick-fil-A rather than like eat this actual good nutritious meal so I can hold on to the rest of this money.
Anybody who played a sport has somebody who immediately pops to mind. Like, I know the girl who was out there. She would not spend a penny of her per diem. They'd be like, wait,
the mall food court on the value menu at the meet trying to save the per diem. Yeah.
Right.
We didn't do that, but we did, reasonable little chunks, $10, $20 over the course of the season. You got a couple $100s at the end of before summer, and it's like you feel good about that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really dope that your coach like kind of had the foresight to be able to say like, hey, let me help you save. Let me hold you all accountable. Let me at least give you the idea that there is this thing that says like, you don't need all of this.
Yeah, that was nice.
All right. So we make it through college, and then what happens?
So I won world championships after my sophomore year. So I didn't really make it through. There was a huge, stop right there. And so when that happened, winning world champs like that, then suddenly, you got the shoe companies coming. So this was Helsinki, Finland, 2005. Now we're talking about pro track and field. We're talking about shoe contracts and all of these things. And I didn't really know anything about it. My full extent of my knowledge of being a pro athlete was Dee Dee Trotter, who was a Lady Vol. And then she had gone to the Olympics, same team you were on, I believe, and came back with a medal and then signed with Adidas. So it was like, that's all I knew about it. And I was like, she's living it up. That's kind of attractive, but I didn't really think too much about it until I won. And so this is a funny thing that when I talk to young athletes about, because they're like, so how do you go pro? And I'm just like, well, I had to win world champs.
Right.
Yeah, I actually had to be world number one before somebody cared enough about me to be like, hey, we want to pay you. It's a very different game now. Like, I actually already had a medal, when I got that contract. But yeah, that was the beginning of the pro career. I was still in college, but I just won a medal. And now we're starting to entertain these conversations about, do I stay? Do I go? Do I get an agent? How much money is worth leaving school for, et cetera?
So, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point for those that are not, engrossed in the track and field world or the Olympic sports world, even, it's not like the NFL or the NBA where, there's a very clear kind of process. Mm-hmm. There's more of you do a certain performance of some sort, or you run out of eligibility. So you perform well while in college and you're wooed out of college, or you finish college and then you go and try to achieve some sort of performance that would bring a sponsor in and allow them to pay you. So there is no W-2 employee. There's USA Track and Field, the same way that there's like the NBA or the NFL sort of thing, but it doesn't work exactly the same way. We are not employees of USA Track and Field. We're independent contractors. And our main money comes from the Nikes, the Adidas, the other, sports companies, as opposed to those being extra on top of a salary for being on a team. So just to clarify there.
And once you graduate from college and you're done with your, eligibility in sport, you're pro. Like there's no other status for you to have. Like you're literally pro. You line up at your next meet as a post collegiate, you win $100. You're pro.
That's it.
So we also get that confused too. Like people think it's the shoe contract that makes a track athlete pro, and it's like honestly, most of us don't have those contracts. Mm-hmm. Most of us lining up in those meets, filling those lanes, don't have those shoe contracts. Only a few of us do, and I think that's also what we need to teach younger athletes about what they can look forward to financially, because I think we make it look a lot more glamorous and a lot more like windfallish than it really is.
Yeah. Don't believe everything you see on Instagram.
No.
Okay. So what happened for you then in that time period? Did you end up signing a contract after winning the world championships, or did you, what happened?
So basically we had like feelers out, because I wasn't all that excited to just jump into the pro world. I was excited that there was a $60,000 check that came with winning that meet, but unless I went pro, I couldn't get the check. And so we kind of were like, if she were to come out of school, what is, like the marketplace saying her value is, right? And at the time, the contracts being offered were like $60,000. And that's not a small amount of money, don't get me wrong, but I was just like, the value that I'm getting from Tennessee and everything that they paid for was more than $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did not feel like $60,000 was worth leaving school for at the time. And even though that shocked a lot of people, I went back to school for another semester.
I'm here for it.
I went back to school. And then ultimately, the thing that made my decision had nothing really to do with the money, because when I did come out, it was only for like $20,000 more than that. And yeah, I did get the prize money check, but it had more to do with how I felt about competing on the college level. I didn't feel it anymore. It's like, I have been to the mountaintop. I can no longer get excited about Sea Ray relays. That's kind of what happened. It was like, it wasn't exciting. The motivation to keep, the hunger wasn't there. I needed to stay on the next level now that I experienced it. So that's ultimately why I gave up the eligibility. But I looked at the cost of the value of my education first, and it wasn't worth it at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that brings up a really good point too about the idea, like, well, there's $60K that you just won from one race, but they're also offering you an annual salary of $60K. And like you said, that's more like a middle class, normal salary. It's great for a 20-something-year-old to be making. But, what does it look like overall if you don't ever earn the big prize money again? It's more like you have a regular job and your regular job is track and field in that regard. So I love the way that you went
really
back.
hard. Yeah, it's like, first of all, it's really hard to stay on top. And being that young, I was 19 when I won the medal. Of course, I thought I was going to win every medal from there on out. But the truth is, you don't. Sometimes you don't make the podium for years and years, which is what I ultimately experienced. But starting salary for somebody who graduates from college back then was $60,000.
Right.
So I was just like, it didn't make a lot of sense to me financially at the time.
All right, take us through the rest of the story. What happens next?
So what happens next is I decide to go pro. At that time, Adidas, who sponsored my school, I thought they were no longer interested in me, and they didn't offer me a deal when I decided to come out of school. I learned later that it was just because my agent never circled back, but here we are. So I signed with Nike. I got a nice signing bonus. I got a nice signing bonus, $35K signing bonus, $80,000 base. They had to pay for my tuition. That was nice. So I added that in after doing that whole returning to school. And there was a huge hiccup. The hiccup was, I was super pumped. I felt like I had made it. Like, I'm a pro athlete now. I've got this, world championship gold medal hanging up in my room over my futon.
Because futons were a thing in college, right?
But now my coach needs to have a meeting with me, and she wants to talk about her payment. And I was like, what? She was like, yeah, you got to pay me to coach you. And I'm like, what do you mean? I had no
does not compute. I don't understand.
We were free just yesterday. Now today it's like, you can't do it. She was like, I can't do it. And I was like, well, what? And I took that extremely personal, but it makes perfect sense. It was business, right? So her job is to be a college coach. And if I'm pro now, that's giving her a new job. But I didn't understand that. So there was a stipend in the contract to pay her a little bit, and she was just like, that's not enough. And so we had a separate contract, and I was just like, I'm not understanding any of this. And you mean the agent gets 15% of this for the life of this contract, and you get all of this money? And I'm just seeing the money just dwindle, and I'm like, this is not the flex I thought it was. Right. Yeah. And the other hiccup was that Tennessee was sponsored by Adidas. And as a Nike athlete, I couldn't wear Nike on campus and use the weight room and use the track. I was not allowed to wear my free gear that I was getting from my sponsor that I was being paid to wear at the place where I trained in order to do those performances for the people who are paying me to perform. And so I was forced to buy essentially a shadow wardrobe of, go to the student bookstore basically and buy all those shirts because they have no labels on them and buy all of those things. So I had like a separate Tennessee wardrobe that I could wear with no labels on it so that I can continue to train. So it was a lot of tension. So that's another thing. Money, if you let it, causes a lot of tension in relationships.
Ooh, you just unpacked so much right there. So one, at age 20, like you said, not having interacted with money in such a way, I think a lot of people don't really understand, like, how does money work? How do we adult? Because like I said, we were just in college and we had training wheels on. And it was like, oh, I didn't have to pay this lady. Like, but it's really hard to put yourself in the frame of mind of this person has a family and they want to retire and they want to save and they want to do these things and that they should be compensated for their work. So why would I do my work for free when you are asking me to provide you some sort of value? It didn't compute for me either.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that I'm older, it's like, duh, why wouldn't you pay for value? Like, I want people to see my value and then pay what I'm claiming my value is. And you shouldn't have to rationalize. Coaches are forced to explain that to us all the time. It's like, well, I have to do this. Like, they have to explain their worth. And I feel really bad that we started out that way. But when you know better, you do better. And I didn't know better at the time.
All right. So we make it through. I mean, there's some tension. Like, let's get back to the tension, I guess.
Yeah.
Do we make it through the tension or do we need to make some changes? What happens?
We did not make it through the tension. So like, it got really old to be the odd woman out all the time. And I was really young. So like my team, they didn't know how to treat me either because it was like, now I'm like, am I on the team? I'm not really on the team. I've got, they came to me for money stuff. And then when they needed stuff, but like, when they did team activities, they excluded me because I'm pro now. So there was a lot of tension there, tension between me and my coach, because now I'm paying her and now I'm kind of her boss, but she's less available to me because she's a college coach, right? She can't actually travel with me anymore. She can't do the things that I had gotten accustomed to her doing. And now that we've added money, it's like, what am I allowed to demand of you? Like now I feel like I'm getting less of you, but I'm paying for you. Yeah. So then I went to indoor world championships in Moscow, Russia, and as the reigning world champion. And the Russians were pissed at me because I shouldn't have won the outdoor world championships the summer before because I had upset Tatiana Katova. And so she was on one. Like she came out and she jumped 7 meters or something. And I wasn't even close to jumping 7 meters. So I was just like, the game is over. And I really struggled. Carol couldn't come to the meet. The assistant coach, who was my long jump coach, backed out at the last minute. And like, when it's a trip to Russia with visas involved, it was like really costly for him to do that to me. So I'm just like, these people are like really messing with my money.
Right. Legitimately.
Really this is not going well. I flew my dad out because I'm a baby still in Russia trying to figure out how to win another medal. So last minute ticket for dad to Moscow, last minute visas to Moscow. And like, by the time I willed myself back to the podium, it was silver at the time, which later was upgraded to gold because Tatiana was busted and banned for performance enhancing drugs. But I think by the end of that experience, I was like, I can't do this. Like, this was too much. I feel like because I have the pro title, I felt abandoned by my support team, who just assumed that I would do it on my own because I was pro now, basically. And so that's when I made a call to Nike, or Nike called me. I don't know which came first, but they were like, okay, it's time for you to try LA with Bobby Kersee. And that honestly was the beginning of the end for me.
Okay. So, coach is being compensated, but not compensated more than her college. So not giving you time necessary. Then money spent on, flights, et cetera, so on and so forth, that people bailed out on. Those are your expenses. Now business expenses as a business owner is kind of what we have to chalk it up to. I think when you're older, you look at it like that. But like I said, in the moment, it's just like, it's still money wasted because it was money spent on a business expense that didn't actually help you grow. And then the last minute flights, which is something that I think athletes deal with all the time, especially as it pertains to like Olympic games and things like that. You make a team really late, and a family that doesn't have the funds to be able to travel, that falls on the athlete. So you covered a whole bunch of different financial stuff there. But now you just said you needed to move to LA. So now you're going from Tennessee to LA, moving expensive. Tell me what happens.
So it was a big move, and I'm from Ohio. So LA was like, ooh, are you sure? Like, am I going to survive that just culturally? That's a culture shock. But Nike paid for the move, and so that made it a little more palatable for me. So put my car in the truck, moved with the duffel bag. My mom and dad kind of came to Knoxville and helped kind of oversee that transition. But my salary was $80,000, and $80,000 in Knoxville not equal to $80,000 in LA. It's not.
There's this little thing called cost of living.
Exactly. Not the same. Not at all. And so I bought an Envoy Denali in Knoxville. I was riding clean in Knoxville. I tried to drive to practice the first week that I was in California, sitting in traffic on the 405 as I watched my gas tank just go, and that it cost me like $100 to fill up. I was like, I can't do this. And so I ended up getting a Honda Accord. Like, I went from an Envoy Denali to a Honda Accord just so that I wouldn't like drain my bank account trying to commute to and from practice. So that was honestly the beginning of the end, because I should have recognized that I could not afford to live and train there. So it really had very little to do with Bobby Kersey and his training program. Like, the thing that actually killed me was like, I could not live there.
So, okay. It's super duper expensive. You can feel that you can't afford, but because I read the book, I know that you managed to buy a condo. So tell us a little bit about, you realize you couldn't afford to live there, but you also purchased. What was the reason behind deciding to purchase, and where was your mindset at then?
So I had kept hearing, like, at that time, the housing market was, we now know, a bubble, ready to burst. But I had just kept hearing, like, if you're paying rent, you're throwing money away. That same amount could be put on your mortgage, and you're building equity, you're building wealth. So here I am feeling like a loser for having an apartment that I'm renting a month, like every month. And so I just kept getting these messages like, you're already paying $1,800 a month. Let that be part of your mortgage. Like, I kept hearing this. And so I kept talking to my mom, like, am I doing this wrong? Should I be a homeowner? Like, am I throwing money away? I'm doing the 1,800 times 12, and you're seeing the amount of money that is just gone, to rent. And so, bless her heart, she was like, I hear you. I'll try to help you buy a condo. And so basically, essentially what happened is I had like the FHA, first time homeowner, 3% down situation, which I had in the bank. And then I had an 80-20 mortgage. Like, I was mortgaged to the eyeballs. So it was like, it was like from two different companies. It was like 80% over here, 20 over here. And it was just like kind of ridiculous. And if I knew better, I wouldn't have pushed so hard. And I think I did, like I said, I had outsourced those sorts of conversations to my mom. And I remember her asking me, like, she was like, well, do you think, track and field will go well? I'm like, what am I supposed to say? I'm a cocky teenager, basically. And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, I'm out here in LA. I'm with Bobby Kersey. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have access to Jackie Joyner Kersey. Like, I feel like long jump is my thing. And like, she was like, okay. And so she risked it for me, basically. We both risked it all for me to live in Westwood, where I could now walk to practice versus drive the 405 for 45 minutes every day. It was like a great location. It was a good situation, but all I actually needed was to have a good season and I would have made it, but it's track and field and I didn't. And so that one bad season got into my head. It created this weird sort of energy and momentum that led to another bad season. And then suddenly I'm drowning. I'm upside down, like in my mortgage. I'm feeling depressed. And like any athlete that suffers with depression knows, it's really hard to pull out your best performance depressed or right like in the thick of that depression. Some of us can put it in a box for a little bit, go do the thing, and then come back and then sit with our depression at home or in the hotel room. But for me, when the depression is triggered by financial insecurity, I cease to be functional. I'm just like, I can't do anything. And that's what happened. So I thought I was doing the responsible thing by becoming a homeowner, but it's not responsible if you can't afford it. And I think we were just getting I was getting a lot of messages from society about what success looked like. Like here I am 20 and at the end of a year could probably clear 6 figures. Like on paper, that looks successful, but the expenses were high and the investment in track and field is high. Like it's not cheap to do this sport well. And so that money is not profit. It's not pure profit at all. I was losing money trying to like invest in myself, trying to set myself up to just have that one good season. And just, I missed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you just said so many different things. So one, athletes, we think we're invincible. That's how you become an elite athlete. You really have to have that unwavering faith in yourself. But also there's tons of other people out there that think they're invincible and life happens and, you know, nobody stays at the top all the time. So there's that aspect of, you know, the fluctuating income that we experience as athletes, because it is just like a natural byproduct of life is going to happen. That's what makes sport exciting for people to watch. But then there's also this idea that, like you said, we are business owners. And so you need to be healthy. You need to have proper massages. You need to eat proper food. There's coaching fees. You already mentioned 15% of your salary was going to your agent. In addition to LA expenses. So I can imagine being, you know, like you said, mortgaged up to your eyeballs and then things don't go as planned. And it's really hard to make ends meet. Yet and still on the outside, people see the world champion, you know, professional athlete, et cetera, so on and so forth, living in LA,
Absolutely.
you know, yeah. And they make certain assumptions about that. So you said that LA wasn't a long-term thing. So what ended up happening?
I basically was too broke to stay and I wasn't seeing the results I needed out of the training program to turn it around. So it was basically like 2008. Was it 2008? Yeah, 2008. I'm sitting on the couch at home watching the Olympics from my couch. And I'm just like, just 3 years ago, I was world champion in the long jump, like the first American world champion in a long time in the long jump. And now I'm a has-been already sitting at home on my couch in LA. And I'm like looking around my apartment, like, first of all, it's a $500,000 condo. It's 450 square feet. It's like tiny, but expensive. And I'm just like, but I'm eating like a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese because I didn't want to go to Whole Foods because I didn't want the sticker shock of the grocery bill, you know, because like, all it takes is one bad season. Like if you have a bad season now, suddenly meet directors forget all about you for the next season. So you have to prove yourself all over again. It's just this really hard cycle to break out of. So I was just not getting the opportunities to compete or to even make that money back. And so I knew I had to make a change. The only other coach I knew that I had been successful with was Carol. So I went back to her and she had already taken a new job at UCF in Central Florida. And so I moved to Florida to start working with her again. So I think I was in LA for 3 years, which is 2 years too long. But I really, you know, people say you got to give new programs like some time to settle in. And like that whole time I was just draining money.
And then you also talked about like the mental health aspect of it and, you know, to feel like a financial failure, to be struggling with that probably privately, because like I said, on the outside, people are like, oh, she's doing good. She's fine. Da, da, da. That adds an additional layer. So there's like, you know, depression in and of itself. Then there's depression brought on by, like you said, your financial circumstances, depression related to not performing well. And that whole mixed bag of it actually affecting your performance, which your performance is the way that you earn the money. And so now you're stuck in this vicious cycle of things that you can't like, how do I break this?
And I was embarrassed because
mhm.
now I'm a stereotype too. Now I'm a stereotype because like there's a high percentage of professional athletes that are broke. Like now I'm that person, and it's been like 3 years. Like it was very, very sad for me. I was so sad.
All right, so we make it to UCF.
Yep, we're in
And
Florida. Mm-hmm.
does life now turn around and
Girl,
presto
no.
changeo? It got
It changed. It changed, all right. So at that point, I was like, I think I'm done. I had 2 medals. It's 2010, 2011, and I'm like, I cannot, like, it's been 5 years since anything good has happened to me in this sport. I think I need to stop holding on. I think I'm fighting past my prime at this point. So I enrolled back in school. And because of the length of my contract at the time, Nike still had to pay for it. So that was great because I never finished Tennessee the first time around. So I'm back in school and I'm like, I've initiated plan B. I was like, okay, I'm going to do molecular microbiology. I'm going to go to medical school. I'm going to put this behind me. Hopefully medical school will make me feel less embarrassed about how much I failed at this track thing. If you just cover it up, maybe I can have those conversations later. Like somebody will be like, oh, you're a world champion once upon a time. Why did you quit? Oh, I quit to become a doctor. Like, I feel like that's an acceptable conversation to have, right? So that's kind of where I was at. And we fell apart again. I think money came between us again, because at this point when I moved, I think my condo had been sold at auction, and I told you it was $500,000. It sold for $284,000. So who got a check? Who got a bill for the difference? I did. I got a bill for the difference. And I was just looking at that bill one day, like, I couldn't even pay this mortgage at the end, but I'm going to be able to pay you the difference between the value of this home and what it sold for at auction. Things were getting really, really overwhelming. My Honda had gotten repossessed, and I was back in my high school car that I had negotiated for when I signed my scholarship. Like, everything was just, all I had was school. I was just like, this is over. But and then Carol, who was seeing like this mental decline and just like everything falling apart, she was like, just retire. No one will like fault you for retiring. And so I did retire for like 3 months. And, I wrote my honors thesis paper, and I kind of was just in my apartment. I was like, and I had three jobs. I worked at Apple, the Body Shop, and the Family Christian Bookstore. So between those 3 jobs, I was paying my rent and utility bills somehow. And I was like, I don't want to retire. I feel like I'm not done. And I was having this internal conversation with myself when she sent me a bill for her services. And I'm like, we haven't seen each other in 3 months. And she said, but I still wrote your plan just in case. And I was just like, I can't even afford to pay for this training program that I never did. Like,
right.
Yeah. And so
you're upside down. You're basically, you lost the house, right? At this point, which so many people did during that time period. And like you said, I haven't heard very many stories, but there are, I'm sure, tons of people who hid that. So like, just even the transparency behind, like, hey, I was a product of what was happening to thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah.
That bubble burst and I got caught right in it. Yeah. So when I got that, I was just like, are you not paying attention? Do you not see what's happening in my life? Like, my car was repossessed yesterday. Like, I'm about to go to bankruptcy court, and you're actually sending me a bill for your services when I have not trained with you in months. Right. And so I basically blew up that friendship. I'm like, I'm not paying this. Like, you don't understand me. I don't get you. Like, I don't want any parts of this. And so, but I was already in Florida. And so I just started training myself, which I think I did enough to kind of keep my fitness up, but obviously not enough to get back to elite. But the cure for worry is action. And I think the fact that I was like taking action about my own life and a little bit of ownership helped me kind of reel it back in. The bankruptcy, although completely embarrassing, and I've really felt a lot of shame around that, did free me. It was like a tool that freed me from the things that I was finding oppressive. And other than like my credit score being tanked forever, I could breathe again and start over. And it was a humbling experience enough where I got to shed a lot of those shoulds surrounding professional athletes and what success looks like. And so it was just a nice reset for me.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we don't talk about the idea, like, the positive side of bankruptcy is that reset. And the possibility that exists because you get that recess. And like you said, to just be absolved of all the responsibility and feeling like you're being buried under a ton of bricks. We just talk about the negative aspect of it, like, oh, you failed, you didn't do this, all the shame that's related to it. But it exists for a reason, and it does provide people with a fresh new start. And so I'm glad you were able to get that.
And we don't have any of those conversations or use any of those words when it comes to bankruptcies. Businesses filing for bankruptcy is literally a tool for businesses and restructuring and all that. We admire people. Like, the former guy was like, oh yeah, I did that a bunch of times because why not? Why not? It's there for you, right? I think when it comes, if I had understood I was a business, I don't think I would have internalized it as much as I did. But that's one thing. Even if you're not a professional athlete, you are a business. Your household is a business. Like, you got to run it like a business. Mm-hmm. And I think just having that kind of distance, that a little bit of separation from who you are as a person and the business of, running your household or your professional life is enough to like help you make a little bit better decisions.
Amen. Hallelujah. All right. So now we're starting fresh. What changes? What happens? Yeah, I'm just gonna say, what's the next part of the story?
The next part of the story is I got a new coach. I think I did one of those track seasons where you take whatever meet you can just to make the money you can. So I ended up in Ghana at the end of the year.
We call that dashing for cash, right?
Yes. I did that. And I was in Ghana at the end of the year, and Nicole Denby was my roommate. And if you know Nicole, like I listened, she talked like the whole time. And while she was talking, she explained how she was about to move to Florida because her coach was moving to Florida. And I was like, we're in Florida, because now like new coach is on my radar. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I joined Rain and Riders Group. And we were called the DBTC, which in public, people thought that meant Daytona Beach Track Club, but it actually stood for Dead Broke Track Club, because we were all broke. We were all really just trying to hustle and make it together. We were broke. And that was 2011. And then like 9 months later, I made my first Olympic team. Now, a lot of stuff happened between that, but like, yeah, that was the catalyst, was going to that training group.
All right. So now you are on a Olympic team. Does a new contract come? Did your contract expired at some point during the bankruptcy?
So Nike dropped me. And I had like no contract for a while. And then Saucony burst on the scene, wanting to get into the track and field space, coming from the distance world, marathon and road racing. And so I got a $20,000 contract, because at that point they were like, you haven't done nothing for years, but you're not a bad person to like start our track and field division with, so here you go, here's 20 grand. So yeah, I made the first Olympic team with $20,000 salary. But that season, before that season, my personal best in the 100 was like 11:20. After that season, it was 10:85. So there was like a lot of bonuses, a lot of stuff that I was able to rack up. I went to Puerto Rico and made $17,000 in one meet, because I ran the 100, the 200, I did the long jump. Like I was just grabbing cash. I was just grabbing the cash. And yeah, so even though my contract was $20,000, I had a lot of bonuses that helped pad that.
And so this kind of speaks to what you were saying earlier, the idea that if you had had the season you expected to have when you had the higher salary, things would have been okay. It's like, now we got the lower salary and you kind of end up in the same situation income wise, because the season went well. So
exactly.
there's like I said, the unpredictability of how it happens, but now it's happening for you in a different way. Mindset wise, are you thinking like, okay, this is a much better situation to be in? Or like, has your money mindset changed overall based on what you'd previously experienced? And now you're like, what are you doing with this cash that you're accumulating?
No, I did not learn the lesson. I once again, I was in a relationship at the time, and they were a money manager, and that's how they presented themselves to me, as that they had my best interest in mind and that they knew better, like they were an expert in this space. And so once again, I was like, well, then you do it, because I'm doing all the training, I'm working really hard, and I'm focusing on this here, and I'm going to just perform and make the money, and you handle it. I'm trusting that that's what's going to happen. And so once again, I knew what I was making in, because no athlete goes into a meet without knowing what they can make.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, we know what the prize money is. We know what the appearance fee is. We know what bonuses get triggered for what performance, we know. So I had this running tally of what I was making, and I wasn't spending a lot of money either, because I was just in a tunnel, honestly. I was just doing what I needed to do. So no, my mindset didn't actually change. I just had more of the money. And then because I discharged that responsibility to someone else, it was still the same mistake that I made before.
All right. So how did you kind of go, I guess maybe take us from that point to where you are today? Like I said, you're being very open and transparent and honest about, so many different things. Are you a money maven now? You got it all figured out?
So this is where I'm at. So 2013, I got injured and didn't run at all. And that obviously triggered a reduction, because that's just the way it goes. But and I also joined the bobsled team. You know a little bit about that. Being on the bobsled team made me realize that I could long jump again, because I set penultimate step jumping into the back of the bobsled. So in 2014, I came back as a long jumper, because my first Olympic team was as a sprinter. 2014, I became a jumper sprinter, jumping 7 meters, being world number one. So 2014 was like Diamond League champ, national champ, like everything that could go well went well. 2015, world champion, Diamond League champion, everything could go well, did. 2016, 2 gold medals at the Olympics. This whole time, I had no access and no idea about my finances. Wow. I had assumed that, I would see these spreadsheet reports, and I assumed that everything was there, and that like all this stuff was being handled, and like my taxes were being paid and my debts being paid down, and all this stuff. Huge assumptions that I was making. And so I think that was in that 14 to 16, 1.3 million in earnings, right? Literally running my ass off. Yeah. But at the same time, that relationship, that marriage was abusive, and I needed to get out of it. And so when I did get out of it and got attorneys involved who have the right to ask these questions, because I couldn't even ask the questions without it being a huge problem or triggering a fight or an incident, I saw that my money was gone. So it wasn't just that I wasn't handling it, it was just gone. So when I filed for divorce, I had very little, I had nothing from my earnings before that. I still was under contract, but I knew how it goes. Like if I had a bad season, it could be gone. And that's basically what happened. I'm trying to manage all that. Just once again, it's like being back at the beginning. I finished 2017 with the bronze medal, and Nike reduced my contract by 65%. No real reason.
At this point, you're trying to managing a divorce, managing, like you said, lack of funds all over again. And, just like overall stressed out, and just can't perform because of that. Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say can't perform, because like bronze medal isn't not performing, it's like, I'm not world champion, but I'm on the podium, right? But for some reason that was interpreted by the powers that be as non-performance. And so I went from I don't even remember what my base salary was, but I do remember doing the math and seeing that my new offer from them was 65% less than just the year before. And to get that letter with everything that I was going through, just triggered another avalanche. So to get from there to where I am now, I just was like, okay, track and field, I think my money making prime is behind me. Even if it's not yet time to retire, there's no way that I can make that million back with the seasons that I have ahead of me. It's just not going to happen. And so I really started to focus on my entrepreneur journey, because just like as athletes, we train, we prepare, we learn, we study. And that's kind of where I put my focus. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to run a business. How do I use my gifts and my talents and my platform to transition out of this sport in a way that allows me to support myself? So money maven, no, but way more intelligence when it comes to money and how to make it, and really just still like knocking on that door really close. I can feel that I'm really close, but really just trying to get back there.
Okay. So tell us a few of the things that you're implementing in your life now, like from a process standpoint and an awareness standpoint, to kind of organize your finances.
Yeah. So I pay someone to do my taxes. Like that was like number one, because originally I was trying to do like, let me go on this website, plug in these numbers, and like just be done with it.
I can save money. I'm not paying anybody to do this. Yeah.
Yes. Like, no, pay someone to do your taxes. But the first thing though was become an LLC, designated as an S Corp, like the stuff they don't talk about, so that the actual structure of the business is an actual business. Like you can say you're an LLC, and that's better than just, pulling all this money in under your social security number. Right. So I had to set that up first. I didn't know that like I could like 1099 my coaches and like the people that I was actually contracting to do this work. And some of them didn't like that, because that meant they were going to be taxed on their end for their income. But like, that's business, right? So pay someone to get the structure right and the taxes right. The other thing is like really separate your business money from your personal money. Paying myself a salary was nice, important at the beginning, because I would like look forward to this little direct deposit that I would get from myself on my little personal debit card, and then not have to worry that I'm overspending, because like we got quarterly checks, as you know, them checks hit the bank and it's like, you're like, hey, yeah, like keep that separate from like your pocket cash or your spending money.
Yeah.
So those are a few things. And also just get over it and just look at your money. Like, it's embarrassing sometimes. Maybe the debt is out of control, but you got to look at it so that you can just know what you're dealing with and make a plan.
Amen. 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 I love all the new things that you're implementing. And I think that especially like to drive home the point for any entrepreneur, to have your business finances over in one area and your personal finances in a separate area, instead of commingling those funds, so that you can very clearly see what's happening in the business, and also very clearly understand what your personal expenses are. So you know your baseline expenses, but then on top of that, you can kind of stabilize your income, because if anybody that is not an entrepreneur thinking about entrepreneurship, money doesn't just fall out of the sky. It doesn't just turn into, wonderful, exactly how we plan it to go. And so you need to stabilize your income and understand what your baseline expenses look like. And then maybe give yourself a little raise here or there as things start to go well, because definitely things are going to happen in the business, and also personally. So yeah, I think that's great advice. All right. To wrap it up, I want to do what I like to call the final sprint. So I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you, and you can say whatever you want. Are you ready?
Okay. I think so.
You got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
A book.
Yes. One time for everybody that likes to read out there. Knowledge is power. Finish this sentence. That awkward financial moment when?
The credit card bill is more than your rent.
That probably a pretty awkward moment. Yes. What is your best money habit?
Making it.
Hey, manifest that money into your life.
No, like I'm really good. Like everything else might be bad, poorly managed, but I do know how to make money. It's just like keeping the money is where we need to get a little bit better.
Would you say that is your worst money habit, or would you say something else is your worst money habit?
My worst money habit. I think convincing myself that something is an investment when it's just a want.
Okay, I'm here for that. Like, it's like I'm investing in myself. It's like, okay, you've done enough of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm also guilty of that. The resonates.
Like, but it's a business course, and it's like, yeah, but that information was also free online.
Right. All right. Worst advice you've ever received?
Ooh. I think it was that I needed to be a homeowner before I was ready. Yeah.
Okay. Something you do for fun that does not cost anything?
Read. Yeah, it doesn't cost me anything to read.
That is true, because you can even go to the library if you're real serious. Yeah. All right. Last but not least, can you share with us one thing that you would like to improve about your personal financial situation in the upcoming year?
Yes. I want to be debt free. I don't want to have that weight on my shoulders.
All right. I'm here for it. What's the action item to help you get to that goal?
Well, I've looked at it, and now I think I just have to. One, I've already eliminated all the subscriptions, that just be dinging the account that we sometimes forget about. I downloaded Truebill and I'm just like, when did I get that subscription? And it's like, you've been paying for this for 4 years. And I'm like, oh my God, so really looking at all those, going on the Apple ID and seeing all the apps that have these little sneaky subscriptions that we might be paying for, eliminate those. Did a review of, like I was telling you before we started recording, did a review of all the clubs and memberships that I have that were for business that I need to take a break from. So yeah, really just paying more attention to where my money is going. And that's not to say that I'm depriving myself of anything. I'll still go to Starbucks, but the difference is I know that I had that money to spend and I know where I spent it, and it's not going to be a $35 cup of coffee because I overdrafted my bank account to get it because I wasn't paying attention.
A $35 cup of coffee better be some good coffee.
We better be in Zurich for that.
Right. All right. We have made it to the finish line. You get to stand on the Worth Listening podium. This is your time to shine. Go ahead and shout yourself out. Tell us how we can support you, where we can find you, all the things.
So you can buy my memoir, Survive in Advance, on Amazon.com. And it's just more of stories like this. And it's really about a life spent running towards things, away from things, and just, we are all stronger than we think we are. We just got to face it and then get through it. And also just follow me on Instagram because I have a lot of things coming down the pipeline, and that's usually where I make my announcements. So you can follow me there at Tianna.t.Madison. All
right, Tiana, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. I know that this story is going to impact many, and I hope that we will make a difference in the track and field world with some of the stories that you shared. So
thank you for having me.